Hey mamas, in today's Built to Birth podcast, Jerrianne, mama of two, shares with us her two unique birth experiences. Her first, having an unplanned induction with an epidural, her second birth, a home birth that she didn't plan on having till she was 34 weeks pregnant. Neither of Jerrianne's births were how she thought they would go, and they definitely weren't in her plans, but she shares with us how she wouldn't change either of them and how she found so much strength in both experiences. If you are uncertain about how to handle change when it comes to pregnancy and birth and trying to figure out how to have an empowering birth amidst change and unknowns, you are going to love Jerrianne's birth stories. If you're looking for a childbirth education course to help you have a healthier, happier, and easier birth, make sure you get my Built to Birth online course that provides you the building blocks for an empowering birth experience. You can find the link to that course in the descriptions below. Also, don't forget to subscribe, rate, and then write a review of the Built to Birth podcast on whatever platform you listen on so that that platform that you're on knows to share it with other mamas who need to hear these empowering birth stories. So let's hop into Jerrianne's birth story. Well, Jerrianne, I'm so excited to have you on the Built to Birth podcast, and I can't wait to hear your two very different birth experiences.
Yes.
So why don't we just hop right in and start hearing a little bit about your birth experience. So why don't we start with your first birth and share us just a few of the big details about your birth experience for your first son.
Yeah. So my husband, Zachary, and I found out we were pregnant with Asher, and he just had a really super normal pregnancy. We were very blessed. It was just super, there was nothing, no big deals. I was somewhat naturally minded then. I knew that I didn't want to be induced if I didn't have to be. And I knew I wanted to do some things like delayed cord clamping and things like that. But I pretty much went into the mindset of giving birth to him thinking that I would pretty much definitely have an epidural. I was just I'm going to have an epidural. I don't think I can do that,
Yeah.
But I had just a really awesome doctor who was actually a friend of mine who I jokingly say she's kind of like the midwife of doctors. She just is so loving and just such a wonderful woman. And she just really respected all of my birth choices and anything that I wanted to do, and people even more naturally minded than me. She was just super on board with all of it. So I went, I think 4 days over, past my due date with Asher. I did have to have towards the end of my pregnancy with him, quite a few, non-stress tests done, just because I was having low fluid levels, low amniotic fluid. So they were having me do twice a week, non-stress tests. And I was I really don't want to be induced if I don't have to, just because I was scared of having a longer labor than I needed to, or I just knew some of the complications that could come with being induced, or a C-section, or just things. I wanted to avoid that kind of thing if I was able to.
Yeah.
So we were waiting as long as possible, and it was 4 days past my due date. And I woke up that morning and I lost my mucus plug, which I was that's weird.
Something's happening.
Yes, what is this? And I had been doing all of the things. I had been bouncing on my little birth ball and just doing all of that. But nothing else was happening except for that I was bleeding, actively bleeding some. So I called my doctor. Is he okay? Can you hear him baby snoring? Or you?
No, he's great. He's so cute. It's perfect.
Thank you. He's fun. So I called my doctor and I was is this normal that I'm bleeding? And she's well, your water may have broken or might be leaking. So why don't you go up to the hospital and have them check you out? And I was okay. I didn't feel any trickle or any gush or anything. I haven't really felt anything, but we'll go ahead. So we took all of our bags up to the hospital, and they were I don't think so, but okay, we'll check you. And they swabbed me, and sure enough, there was amniotic fluid. So
wow. Okay.
And I was really surprised by that. And I was kind of bummed because I was like, well, I just kind of wanted to wait for the onset of contractions. And knowing what I know now, I may have been able to like say, I want to wait a little while or, because I was not dilated at all. I was hardly effaced. Like I was just, my body had not really done any kind of
work. Yeah. Preparation.
Right. Yeah. So, but they said that your fluid levels are already low and we don't want to send you home. We're just going to go ahead and give you some Cervidil and, it's just soften your cervix. They gave it to me orally because I had the fluid leaking. And they said that they were just going to wait a while and then they would start Pitocin. So I was like, okay, I didn't know what to say or how to advocate for myself, but I was just like, okay, I'm ready for this baby to come anyways. So they induced me. They gave me the Cervidil in the morning, and then at 5:30 in the afternoon, they just started me on a Pitocin drip. Okay. And I mean, automatically, like from that Pitocin, like I just had very, very intense contractions, like just right away. And I was kind of shocked by them, and they were very, very close together almost immediately, just really like super intense with the Pitocin. And so other than that, I mean, it wasn't any kind, no horror story or anything like that. I just had really onset of contractions very quickly, very intense and very close together. So I got my epidural and that went well enough, and it was only 5 hours from like when they started Pitocin to when he came.
Wow.
So it happened really, really quickly. And I'm thinking, that's probably just because of the Pitocin. I learned with this one, it was not because of the Pitocin. It's because I have babies fast.
Apparently.
But so I only pushed for, I think, around 20 minutes with him. And I mean, for what I wanted and what I knew and what I was expecting, it was really beautiful. Like I had a great experience with him. The postpartum with him was what was really, really difficult, both physically and mentally, I would say. I tore really terribly with him, with Asher. And just almost immediately after having him, I just was extremely anxious. And it was from that the onset of, I had some pretty serious like postpartum anxiety with him. And I think after doing some research, and there's no way for me to know for sure 100% like why it could have been so many things. I was a first time mom and all of that. But I really felt like how fast my body was pushed into labor and how like I felt like I was there for something that was happening to me, but I wasn't really experiencing it, if that makes sense at all.
Yeah, totally.
And I just really felt like my brain and my hormones just never really caught up to that, if that makes sense. And I just think that like I just wasn't able to respond naturally to like this really significant event that had happened.
Yeah.
And then on top of that, being a first time mom, like in the hospital system, like it was a couple days we were there and then we were sent home and I had all these questions and breastfeeding was really, really, really hard for us and we weren't able to do it. And I had a lot of like just things that I had expected to go one way that just didn't. And, mom guilt is just a crazy, crazy, terrible thing. And so I had a lot of just a hard time healing physically. I felt like I got hit by a bus afterwards, and then mentally, it was a really rough couple of first months. It was beautiful. And I was of course thankful for my son and thankful to be a mom. And thankful that even in all of that, God is good and he provided for me in ways with my family and my friends, like looking back, just ways that I might not have seen in that moment, but he was providing for us and we got through it. But knowing what I know now, that's the only part that I wish I would have had a different, maybe experience that
Yeah.
that I believe led up to that. But that was our story with our Asher.
So for a mom which I think that story is encouraging of your induction, because, I think most moms go into it feeling like, oh, this for sure is going to be long and very challenging.
Right.
And so to hear stories that are like, well, it doesn't necessarily have to be that way. What would you say you would like encourage moms who are facing an induction that maybe they weren't planning on having? What encouragement would you give them or some kind of advice?
I would say that every experience, particularly with birth, I think is just so different from person to person. It's easy to like latch on to a horror story and just think that that's going to be for you. And that just, it wasn't the case for me. I don't think it has to be that way for a lot of people. And I think induction in a lot of medically necessary cases is really a beautiful gift to us that's able to happen to keep mom safe and baby safe. And in our case, that very well could have been, a safety precaution for us. And like I said, other than it just being really intense from the start and needing that pain, that help with that relief, it was a beautiful experience for me. I had my husband there, I had my mom there, I had my mother-in-law there. We had really, really wonderful nurses who were respectful of our wishes and like I said, I had an awesome doctor. I was able to have worship music playing that I wanted, and we were able to keep the lights low, and I was able to, at the end of the day, my son, our sweet boy, came into the world, and he was healthy and I was healthy, and what more can you really ask for? Like I wouldn't say I would go back and change anything because he's here, and it was really cool actually in a lot of ways.
Yeah. And I think that's so important too for moms who are facing an induction to really make their space their own. Like you had your music playing, you were able to have, the lights dimmed, you were able to have people with you who were taking care of you and encouraging you and supporting you. And I think, would you say that that's an important aspect of having an induction?
Yes, absolutely. I think that particularly people who are probably watching your YouTube channel are like birth minded and they're excited about giving birth. So just, you're excited about it. And I think that making that space your own and making it, taking it from being a medical procedure, because birth is not a medical procedure. It's a very sacred and incredible moment of a family member coming into the world and just this huge gift. So I think like any way that you can treat it that way and treat it as the special and beautiful moment that it is, and take some ownership in that, I would definitely encourage mamas to do that. Like, I think that in both of our stories, that has been a huge blessing to us, to be able to really appreciate the moment for what it was and make it our own.
Yeah. And I love, love, love how you say, like, just own your birth experience, take ownership in it, because especially in the case of an induction where you feel like it might not be a situation that you are owning. It's not like you're like, most women aren't going into it wanting it to happen.
Right.
And so finding ways that you can really implement what you want and finding ways to own the experience, I think does make it that sacred and special event like you were talking about. So I love that you shared that. And so now fast forward 2 years. Oh, hi, little guy.
He's like, you're talking about me.
He's
now.
like, yeah. Oh, I love it. So fast forward to his birth. Kind of share your experience, because it was almost a 180 turn to
very much
your first
so.
experience. Yeah. So why don't you share with us at what point in your pregnancy you were starting to really prepare for your birth, and then at that point where you decided to kind of change your plans a little bit.
Yeah. So going into to my pregnancy with Benjamin, we were kind of expecting to go down the same path, have a hospital birth. I was in my mind thinking a little bit more like, I think I'd like to try to do it more natural this time. just for the reasons that I had listed. But I had this idea in my head. I really hadn't gotten any kind of education on childbirth. I hadn't started watching videos. I'd never done a childbirth class, nothing like that. I still kind of had this idea in my head that there are people who do that. And then there are people like me who like maybe could do it, but like I'm not that strong minded. I'm not that naturally like, I have my hippie friends and I'm sort
like
of
you have to be that mom in order to do that kind of birth.
Yes, exactly. I had this idea in my head that, we'll see, but I'm not committing to it. I don't know if I really could do that. That was my mindset on it. And our pregnancy was just kind of back and forth. Like they told me I had complete placenta previa and that it really likely wouldn't move. And then within 6 weeks, it had moved completely away, which was just an answered prayer. So we went from thinking like, I think that I'm going to have a somewhat natural hospital birth to, okay, you're going to have a scheduled C-section at 37 weeks to, okay, never mind. Like, whoa, the doctor was like, okay. Like that doesn't really happen so super often that it moves that quickly. It moved like completely away within 6 weeks, which was just crazy.
So completely away from the cervix. It had just come.
So it was completely covering my cervix, like not a partial, but a complete previa. And then within 6 weeks, like it wasn't even touching it anymore.
Wow.
And I was like,
incredible.
Oh my goodness, just praise the Lord. We had been praying and our church family had been praying. And it was definitely an answered prayer for us. Just because I do love birth. Like I've always been super interested and a C-section is absolutely just as one, like a birth. Absolutely. Yeah. But it was something I was nervous about and it wasn't like my plan, so I was disappointed. So for that to not be an issue anymore was really awesome. So we got to, I think, my 34th week in my pregnancy, and I went to my regular OB visit, and they were telling me just about some of the hospital procedures that were changing due to COVID-19. So they told us like that there would only be one person allowed to come with me. And that was kind of sad because my mother-in-law and my mom and my sister-in-law and best friend had been with me for Asher's birth. And then also that if the person, like if my husband, Zach, had any symptoms, if he had a fever, if he had a cough, if he had anything, he would not be allowed to come with me. And that we would both have to wear masks the whole time. If he came, he wouldn't be allowed to leave at all, or he wouldn't be able to come back. And then I asked, I was like, okay, so what happens if I have symptoms that say, I have a cough or a fever and, any of those symptoms. And they said that they would take the baby away and isolate him from me until they could get a negative or positive test, and that's a lot of what ifs, of course, and none of that had been happening yet, but I was it made me so anxious. Like I did not have peace at all anymore. And I went home and I told my husband and I told my mom and I cried. And even my husband, who's just really, out of the two of us, I'm definitely the more emotional one. And he's definitely more kind of like the level-headed, steady part. And he was taken back by it even. And it was weird because I had never talked to my mom or my mother-in-law about home birth or any of that. And both of them were like, have you looked into home birth? And I was like, no, no, I haven't. So I kind of threw it out there on my Facebook page and really in my mind did not really think that it would be something that I would really truly consider, just because I wasn't educated on it and I didn't know if it was safe. I didn't think that it was safe. So I was like, I don't want to make an emotional decision because I'm scared of one thing and do something else that's not going to be good. So I just put out there, is there anybody in our area who's had a home birth? Did you have a midwife come to you or what? Because we live in a small area, in a small county. So there are no midwives in our county. Okay. We have two hospitals, but only one of them takes labor and delivery patients. So I was like, I mean, what even are my options?
Yeah.
And so that day, I mean, several people contacted me, all with the same midwife place, this Lakeland Midwifery Care. And they were all like, we had this wonderful experience with these midwives. Like, they come to your home and blah, 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 blah. So I was like, oh, okay. Like, okay. So I was like, well, let me just find out about this. Let me research this some. So I called and I told them, I was like, I'm 34 weeks. I'm at the very end of my pregnancy. I don't know what it would take to transfer. I don't know if you take transfers this late. And I don't even know if this is something I'm even comfortable doing. But so I like made a list of all of the really hard questions. Like, what happens if this happens? What happens if this happens? What happens if this happens? You know, what would you do? And they
all
really
the what
had
ifs that you wouldn't necessarily have in a hospital setting where you knew you were going to get all of that care. Yeah.
Right. Like, what happens if there's a complication? What happens if the baby has a complication? What about me? What's your plan? Like, and I was just amazed and shocked that they had, like, it really is very safe. And they have basically a small hospital with them when they come, you know?
Yeah.
They just have, and they have a plan, and their transfer doctor, like, if in the very rare case that something were to go wrong, actually was my doctor. Who had worked with them before. It was just like all of these things that just kind of falling into place. And I really felt like, wow, like it just felt right. And it felt like a gift to me from God that he would just kind of show me and like reassure me that it was okay. So I was like, okay, I think it was a Friday when I talked to them on the phone. And I was like, okay, well, if I want to do this, how long do I have to like talk it over with my husband and make a decision before I need to transfer? And they said, we only have very few spots left because there are a lot of people because of this virus transferring. And we want to be able to give this care to each of our moms, you know, so we would need you to tell us by Tuesday if you want to switch or not. So my husband gets home and I was like, okay, so I did not think he was going to go for it really. Just cause I don't know. I just didn't think so. And he got home, I told him I'm kind of a researcher. So I like listed all of the things like pros, cons. This is all of the things.
Yeah.
This is all the safety measures that they have in place. Like, what do you think? And he was just so like, we should do it. Like, we should do it. I have a piece about it. I do not have a piece about being in the hospital. And I just 100% feel confident that we should do this. And I was like, oh, I didn't expect you to say that. Like, oh my goodness. Okay. So this just got really real. So I, you know, and that got back to what I really had to take into consideration was, okay, I have this whole time felt like there's this type of mom who can have a natural birth. And I don't know if that's me. And I kind of had to confront that fear of not being able to handle this pain. And one of my very good friends, her mom is a retired doula. And so I was able to call her and she just gave me so much reassurance, like just things that you have said, that our bodies are built to do this. And she agreed that she would come and kind of do like a little childbirth class and then come and be with me during the birth, which just gave me a lot of confidence. And I just started reading things and just the next morning, like I called Saturday morning. It didn't take me till Tuesday. I called and I left a message. I was like, okay, I want a spot. Like, don't give my spot away. I want to do this. So that's 34 weeks. So I had not a whole super long time to prepare. I know like a lot of people who do home births and who have midwives, one of their favorite things about it is that personalized care that they have with their midwife and this relationship that they have. And I was kind of disappointed that I hadn't had the time to build that. So I was like, we got to get to work on building that relationship because I want that, you know? So I did the logical thing and took to YouTube. I was like, okay, somebody tell me what I got to do here. And that's when I found you. And I mean, I had no childbirth education, no, like even before Asher or after, I didn't have any real, like nobody talked me through the stages of labor and what was happening and why my body would feel this way or that way or ways to cope with things. So I like binge watched all of your videos. I was watching all of the, just the different stages of labor and the breathing, which all helped a lot. And I had a friend who had a home birth, who I was able to call and listen to her experience, which is just so powerful and encouraging. Like maybe more than anything, hearing somebody else like tell you that they did this and that you can do this. And one of the things that she told me, because I said, okay, what do I need to read? What do I need to watch? What do I need to, how do I prepare for this? And she said, I felt exactly like you did. And that's all great. You know, you can do that. You can read, you can educate yourself. All of that's wonderful. But just know that you don't need to come at it from a place of fear. Like someone needs to tell you how to do this, because you were built and born to do this, and you can do this. Your body already knows what to do. If you were to never pick up another book, never to watch another YouTube video, never to, you know, your body knows what to do and you can do it. And I was like, okay, you know, and then I had another friend who had a birth center birth, and she was telling me the same thing. She sent me a lot of like really beautiful birth affirmations that I later printed out and was able to put all over my walls and things for labor. Just these encouraging things, that your body is capable of this and you know what to do. Even though you don't think you know what to do, you do know what to do. So we just started preparing. I started getting all my supplies together and stuff, things that you don't think about when you're having a hospital birth, you know, getting all of that together. So we did that, and we had our midwife visits. I had to travel about an hour and a half away for my midwife visits.
Okay.
And my midwife, they did one home visit. They came to, there was 3 of them, and one of them, her name was Amanda, came and did our home visit. And she spent, I think, quite a few hours here with us, just talking through all of my fears and all of just some of the trauma that I had carried on my shoulders from our postpartum experience with Asher. And I cried talking to her because she was just so encouraging, that you're not going to give birth and then we say, see you later. Like with us, you get this team of people to come around you and support you afterwards. And to me, it was like, oh, you know, and I sat there with my husband and I cried, and I was just like, you know, I'm in so many ways thankful that I am pregnant and giving birth during this pandemic, because I probably never would have sought this out, but it's what I needed, you know, after having such a hard experience with our first son. Like I was anxious going into it that the same thing was going to happen, that I wasn't going to know what to do and there wasn't going to be anybody there to support me. And that would have been the case, you know? And so having that reassurance was just such a blessing to me.
That's so beautiful. And that's so helpful for any mom who's approaching labor and then that postpartum period, to know that she's going to have support after that. Yeah. So all of that happened around 34-ish weeks. Then how far along were you when you went into labor?
So I was 3 days past my due date, which I swore I was going to go early because he was super low and it was my second baby, and I was walking and drinking all the teas and doing all the things. And I was getting like discouraged. I was like, oh, I want to have this baby. But I knew like my body would do it in its time. So I went to my appointment the day before I ended up going into labor. And I had a membrane sweep.
A membrane sweep,
Yeah. It wasn't, she said that I was like 50 or 60% effaced, and that I was not even 2 centimeters dilated. So she wasn't able to do like a super sweep or whatever. But she did a little sweep. And so I went home that night, and it was actually, it's just so funny, like the little details that you see looking back on it that you didn't know were happening as they were happening, you know, that I just really feel like are just gifts from God to me. I really felt like he was blessing me through them. Like, we went to bed that night. My son Asher, he sleeps in his own room. It's been months since he woke up in the middle of the night and came into our bed. Like, it's been forever. And that night he woke up, my husband went and got him and brought him into our bed. Just weird. It just doesn't happen, you know? And I woke up at like 3:45 in the morning. I just felt kind of strange. And I had to pee, like always. And I saw Asher and I was like, okay, you know, I had been snuggling with him and I was like, I'm going to go put him in his bed, which I also never do. Like when he used to come in with us, I would never just go put him back in his bed in the middle of the night. But I did. I picked him up and I went and put him back in his bed and he didn't wake up. He just went right to sleep. Just strange things like that. But I feel like looking back on it was a really sweet little blessing, like that last night when he was our only baby, you know, to be able to be in bed and snuggle with us, which was just really sweet.
Special.
Yes. So I went and put him in bed and then I went to the bathroom and I saw the rest of my mucus plug fall out. I had been losing little pieces of it for the weeks ahead. But I saw that and I was like, okay. And then I felt like this sensation and I remember I had been induced. So I didn't know what early labor felt like. Like my first contractions were like, oh, take your breath away contractions with Asher.
Yeah.
So I just felt like, I was like, okay, I think that might have been a contraction. So I was like, I'm just going to lay down. And I did my little contraction timer and like 13 minutes later, another one happened. And then I was like, okay. And then like 6 minutes later, and then 5 minutes later, like it jumped to that very, very quickly. And I was like, I don't think that maybe this is just in my head because I don't think it happens this quickly. I don't think that it's, and they weren't unbearable. Like I had to take pause and like, I could definitely tell that they were happening, but it wasn't super painful or anything like that. So I called my midwife and I was like, you know, so this is what's happening. I know y'all are an hour away and you told me to let you know right away. But I don't want y'all to come if nothing is really happening. And she's like, okay, well, why don't you go ahead and take a shower and call me back in like 45 minutes. So I got in the shower and things started getting a lot more intense pretty quickly. Just that, like I was having to really breathe through them and like focus on my breathing. And I was like, okay, these are contractions. Like I'm sure that this is a contraction. And before I got in the shower, I had called my mom and my mother-in-law. I was like, you know, things might be happening. And that was, I think at like 4:45 or so. My first contraction was at like 4. I was like, you know, I'm going to take a shower. You guys do what you want. I don't think you need to rush on or anything like that.
Yeah.
So I get out of the shower and I was like, okay, no, these are contractions. These are definitely contractions. And now they feel like they're much closer together than 5 minutes apart already. But I had stopped timing them. So I called my midwife and I was like, yeah, I think these are contractions. And then I was like, okay, can you hold on a minute? Because I couldn't talk through the next one to tell her. I was like, can you hold on a minute? And so I think, you know, her with all of her experience, she's like,
yeah.
Okay.
It's time.
Yeah. And then while I was talking to her, I think it was 2 or 3 minutes later that another one came. She's like, okay, I'm going to send Amanda, who happened to be the one who was here for my home birth or my home visit. So that was just really special too. And so the other 2 midwives were at other births during that time, which they're like, this never happens that we're all here and there.
Must have been a full moon or something.
Yeah, I know something was going on. So I woke up my husband and I was like, yeah, I'm definitely in labor. So let's start getting things ready. So, you know, in my mind, I had gotten like our supplies was in boxes and baskets and just, I had things tucked away. And I thought, well, when I go into labor, I'm going to have hours of time to just kind of get my stuff together.
Everything
I had
out and
I was just like, it's no big deal. I'm glad that I had already taped up my affirmations on the wall and stuff, and like our Bible verses that we had. I'm glad that they were already out, because that would not have happened. And he was kind of asking me, okay, where does this go? Where does this go? And he was blowing up the tub for me. And it got to the point where I stopped really being able to instruct him. And I was like, hey, you really need to call our moms back. I told them they could take their time, but I don't think that they can take their time. And it went from like, I had a birth playlist with all my worship songs that I wanted to turn on, and I wanted to put my little diffuser on and things like that. And I just kind of gave up on all of that. Someone eventually turned my music on and stuff like that, but I stopped like being in, okay, you do this and you do this mode. And I just had to go into this like labor land space, which I had heard people talk about, but hadn't experienced like this before. So I was in my living room and I had my birthing ball and I was kind of bouncing on it. And then I got on my knees and was like leaning up over the ball. And that was really helpful. And I had all of my labor was mostly in my back. So my mother-in-law got there, my mom got there, and they were putting the counter pressure on my back for me. And then my husband was doing that for me too. And then my doula got there. And it was just so funny. I can remember she came in, she's just this very sweet woman. And just such an essential part of my birth team. I'm so thankful that she was there, because she brought all this experience with her, but she also just brought this like just gracious, like kind of peace. Like she just was very reassuring to me. So she came in, she sat on my couch, she grabbed my hand. She's like, how are you doing? And I was like, I just kind of started crying, not because it was too much or because I just remember saying, I'm scared because I feel like this is happening and I'm fine right now. But in my mind, I have 6 more hours to go of this. And I was doing labor math, as they called it. Like, I was like, okay, how long can I do this for? And, is it, how much worse is it going to get, before for this or that? And so in my mind, I was like, I don't know how much more I can do. And so I'm scared. And she told me later, she's like, I wanted to tell you that I was pretty sure you were in transition then. But I didn't want to say that without your midwife being there and not scaring you or, her checking and making sure that that was true. But by the way you're acting, I was pretty sure that you were in transition. And so she stopped and she prayed with us. We all prayed. And I just that helped me a lot. It just kind of centered me. And then I remember the same thing that happened with Asher. I had to use the restroom a lot, like through labor. I felt like I had to poop and I really felt like I had to pee and I wasn't able to pee, which was really weird. I guess he must've been sitting on it some way that made me feel like I had to pee and I didn't. But I remember looking at my husband at one point and that same labor math thing going on. It was never to where I felt like I can't do this. But I was like, how long can I do this? Like, is this going to be okay? Can I do this? Like, tell me I can do this, And he's like, you're going to have to do this. Yes, you can do this. So I was just kind of laboring on my ball and I was leaning over it and just having to breathe through the contractions. And my midwife got there. And she was hearing the way I was breathing and things like that. And I stood up and I was like, I think I have to go to the bathroom again. And I was holding on to the wall and I looked at her. It had not been very long since I first started having contractions. And I was like, I think that he's coming. Is that crazy? Like, I feel like he's coming. And she's like, no, I think he's coming too. I should probably check you, like, because of the way that I was acting. And it was just really cool the way that, she was able to do the Doppler and check like in whatever position I was in. Like I didn't have to do anything special, So she was checking that and then she had me lay down to check my cervix. And she's like, okay, well, you have about this much left on one side and then you are completely dilated. And it had not been long at all. So I was like, okay, I want to get in the pool. So I got into the pool that was in our kitchen And I was on my hands and knees, and it was special. My husband and I are both, we lead worship. And so I had my worship music playing in the background, and it was fun to how, like in between contractions, I was just in this space, like my eyes were closed and I was not, like nothing around me seemed real, but I could hear like these little bits of these songs that I had purposefully put on to this playlist for myself. And it was like just that little bit of hope and that little bit of strength, that just reminders of truth that I needed in those moments. And I remember like just holding on to those through the next contraction and holding on to that through the next contraction. It was just really special and precious. And it was wonderful. And my son was still sleeping through all of this.
Wow.
Which was also crazy, you know? So I got into the tub and I was on my hands and my knees. And I was just kind of having these contractions. And then all of a sudden I was like, okay, I'm pushing. Is it okay that I'm pushing? You know, because with Asher, they had coached me and like told me everything I had to do. And I wasn't really aware of what was happening so much. But with this, I felt I could feel everything. And I felt like in a way, not in control, like my body was just doing it, but in a way, very much in control, like that it wasn't happening to me. Like I was actively a part of it, you know? And my midwife was just like, your body is very, very smart. Like you push when you need to push. And at first, like my first thought was like, what? You're not going to tell me what to do? Like for a split second, I was like, had this fear. And then it just kind of went away because she was right. Like, and it was just very obvious that she was right. My body did know what to do. Like I was thinking about thinking about now, I don't know if in that moment I was thinking about it, but the affirmations that I had, that my body is fearfully and wonderfully made and built to give birth, and just that I'm capable of these things. So I was having the contractions and I was kind of pushing through them. It was really interesting. Just that pushing made a lot of the pain go away for me. I don't know what that's about, but I just needed to. I just had to push. And at that point,
it's very relieving.
yes, it was so relieving. Which is funny. You don't think it's going to be like that. That was the part I was fearful of, but it was not anything to be afraid of. So at that point, my son ended up waking up, and he came out, and they put him in his little high chair and gave him a popsicle. And this is what they tell me. I was in my own little world. I was not aware of everything around me. But I guess he kind of looked over at me like a little bit concerned, because at this point I was kind of roaring, you know, through the contractions. And it's funny because just the couple months leading up to that, he had just become obsessed with dinosaurs. And so he runs around like pretending to be a dinosaur and roaring. Like he even does the stomps and like scans the room. Great. Like he is a very believable dinosaur. And so my mother-in-law was just like, she noticed him getting a little bit concerned. And she was like, oh, don't worry, Mom. Mommy's just being a dinosaur. Mommy's just being a dinosaur. And he was like, oh, okay, roar, Mama's a dinosaur. So that was just cute. Really, really great. I love that. I love it. I love that he was able to be a part of his baby brother's birth in that way. You know, it's just really fun and special.
So how long was the pushing stage for you then?
Only, I think they said 20 or 30 minutes.
Wow.
So I had watched a video, and I don't know if subconsciously it kind of stuck with me or not, but there was a woman who was telling her birth story about how she had a water birth, and how she was like, had reached inside of herself and like had felt her baby's head coming down with each contraction. And so that just, I don't know if I was thinking about that or if my body was just, or what, but I was on my hands and my knees, and I was just very inside of myself watching the video later. My mother-in-law had taken a video, and my mom did. And I was like, was it really that bright in the room? And they're like, yeah. I was like, I do not remember it that way. Like in my mind's eye, it was dark. in there.
Yeah.
Like it was dim.
Interesting. Wow.
And I don't know if that's just because my eyes were closed or if I was just so very much like, I just have a picture in my mind of like the water and like it being dim. And like I had my hand and I was feeling, my midwife said, if you reach up a little bit, that's his head. I was like, that's his head. And it's kind of funny. It's just silly. I was like, I thought it was going to be harder than that. Like it just felt really soft.
Squishy.
Yes. And so, I was on my hands and my knees, and then I had my hands draped over the edge of the tub. And I was pushing, and I could feel his head just kind of go from where I could just feel it to where it was touching my hand to where it was like completely touching my hand. And it was just really special just to think about like the affirmation you hear, each contraction brings me closer to this blessing and this answered prayer. And I really got to very tangibly experience that. Like each contraction, I could feel him coming closer to meeting us, which was just so special. And then, so he got to be crowning, and then his head came out, and they're like, okay, if you push one more time, he's coming. And so I pushed, and I don't know what came over me. I was not planning on this. Like I did not plan on catching my baby, but I just like swooped him up out of the water and put him on my own chest. I was like, I don't want him to be underwater. I don't know what was.
Yeah.
So that was really special, being the one to be able to catch him.
Yeah, that's
and bring
so
him
beautiful.
up.
That's amazing.
Yeah. So, and
that's
I just,
incredible.
Yeah. So my husband and I were just there, and we were just crying, and I was like, he's here, and I did it. I can't believe I just did that.
I know.
Yeah.
It's a huge accomplishment.
Yes.
So from start to finish, how long was your labor then at home?
3.5 hours.
Yeah. So which was really quick.
Yes. It was really, I'm sorry. My headphones are doing weird things. Yeah, it was really, really fast. And, which was also an answered prayer. I had like a list of things that I was, knowing that they're not that they would necessarily happen or whatever, but I was praying, just for certain things that I wanted. And I had prayed for like a timely and kind of swift labor. So that happened. Another thing that was really special is on my playlist. There was a song, it's called The Blessing. And it talks about, may his favor be upon you in 1,000 generations, and your family and your children and their children and their children. And I had that song's just so special to me. And in that moment, I had been praying like, it would be really cool if that song was the song that was on when he was born. And it just happened to be the song that was playing when he came out. And it's just another
incredible.
like little God gift. I just really feel just so thankful and blessed, like the whole experience that went from something I was so afraid of, and fearful of, being fearful of the virus and being fearful of all these different things, and then being fearful of not being able to handle pain or being fearful of things going wrong, just turned into this really special and beautiful time. And it was just such a huge blessing. And then Asher got to be right there and come right up and meet his brother. And it was just so special that like we became a family of 4 in our home with our family, like with people that we knew and that we loved. And it was absolutely incredible. Like not only was it bearable, it was incredible. Like it was just one of the most special days of my life. And never was there a moment, like there were moments where it was extremely intense. And there were moments where like, you could even say that, yes, of course it was painful, but it never felt to me like I'm going to die. I can't do this. Like I never felt that way. I felt for the moment capable, like I had the strength to do that moment.
Yeah.
And it was just that one contraction at a time, one moment at a time.
And I think that that's such a huge thing for moms going through labor is, don't look too far in the future, because that is going to overwhelm you. Just take it one surge at a time, one breath at a time.
Yes.
And, each contraction does bring you closer to meeting your baby. And so I think that's so awesome that you said that. If there is one thing that you could share with moms who are experiencing birth right now, who are maybe having to change plans and feeling a little bit uncertain or facing the unknown right now, what advice or encouragement would you give them?
So, for me as a Christian, my first thing that comes to mind is just that, we're not in control of things. God is in control of things, and we can trust him, and he's sovereign, and he's a good God, and he loves us. That doesn't mean things always go as planned, of course, but they go as planned to the ultimate plan, which I think is for our good and his glory, So on top of that, I would say to trust in the fact that your body was built for this, and kind of echo the words of my friend who said that, don't think that someone needs to teach you how to do this. Your body already knows and is already capable. And all of those things to take it just that one breath at a time, and to really kind of try to soak in that experience. I wouldn't have believed, had I not experienced it, that like that pain or that intensity or that time could be such an incredible memory that like I don't look back on it like, ugh, that was horrible. Like I look back on it like, wow, that was incredible. Like there was so much strength in that moment, It was, and that was a blessing. Like that pain, that contraction, that surge, whatever you want to call it, was a blessing that brought my son to me, and it was just, it's wonderful. And, whatever way you bring your baby into the world, whatever type of labor, whatever type of delivery you have, the end goal is the baby, and the mama, they say a mama is born every time a baby is born, and that's absolutely true. And you can do it. You absolutely can do it. I look back on it feeling like so much stronger and more empowered of a woman. And I think that is something that I have been able to carry into this second stage of my journey of motherhood with a second child. It comes with new challenges, having two babies and, having to give more of yourself. Like, I think that those moments in birth kind of prove to yourself in a lot of ways, you're stronger than you think you are, Yeah. So
yeah.
I'm excited for all of the mamas out there who are going to be doing that. It's going to be awesome. Like, just get excited about it. Don't let yourself sit in fear and worry.
Well, I love it. And I think those are wise words. And just like you said, earlier in this is, hearing real life stories of women who have gone through this, and who have done it in such an empowering and confident way, even when they didn't know if they could do it to begin with. Hearing those real life stories is going to be so powerful and transformative. And so again, thank you for sharing your story with us.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been such a cool thing to go from watching you on TV to talking to you. I hope that my story can encourage people like the birth stories I was able to watch before having him encouraged me.
I know. I know that it will encourage so many mamas. It's encouraged me, and I hope you enjoy this newborn stage with your little one and your firstborn as well. And again, thank you for taking the time out of a busy day with two kids to share with us. So have an amazing rest of the day. I hope you have an incredible next few months of this postpartum period, just enjoying the newness of another little baby.
Yes, thank you so much. We'll keep looking out for you and all the stuff you're doing. You definitely make an impact. So I hope you know that.
Thank you. Oh, thank you so much. We'll have a fabulous rest of the day, Jerrianne.
You too. Talk to you later.
Bye.
Bye.
Mama, didn't you just love Jerrianne's birth stories? She spoke so confidently about the truth that her body is built to birth, and Mama, yours is too. If you need some positive reminders of that, you can download my Built to Birth affirmation meditations that guide you through a relaxing, positive, and empowering pregnancy, birth, and postpartum experience. No matter where you give birth, your experience can be a beautiful one when you can trust yourself, the process, and your baby. Sometimes to trust in it, you do need a little bit more information and education, and since education is empowerment, don't forget to hop on the Built to Birth online course to help you have an empowered, happier, healthier, and easier birth. So thanks for being with me in this one, and I will see you in the next one. Bye, mamas.